We're going to leave politics and taxes and talk about a situation that I'm sure at many a dining room table families are having. And it began really in Long Island, where tonight a family and many friends in the community are holding a vigil for a high school football player who tragically lost his life following a game on the gridiron. Authorities say 16-year-old Tom Cutinella, he played for Shoreham-Wading River High School. He died Wednesday night at the hospital after suffering a head injury during a game with John Glenn High School. Officials say Cutinella, he collided with the player on the other team and collapsed during the game.
It's really upsetting because he was one of the nicest kids in our school, and he helped everyone out, and it's just really sad.
Now, Cutinella is the third high school football player in the nation to die from a brain injury related to football just this week, actually. Sunday, Demario Harris Jr. of Alabama, he died following a tackle during a game. Doctors say he had ruptured a brain aneurysm. Isaiah Langston, linebacker from North Carolina, he died after collapsing during a pregame warm-up on Friday. His brother telling the media that his death was related to a blood clot in the brain. Last year, there were 8 football-related deaths across the nation, 75% of them related to brain injuries, and the balance were caused by cervical fractures. We asked NFL Hall of Famer Harry Carson not long ago how he would feel about his grandson playing football.
He is not going to play football. And that is something that I feel very emphatic about, and they understand that. Knowing what I know now, if someone had told me, or if someone had told my parents years ago, I think my parents would have made the same decision.
And there's data that backs us up more than just the tragedies we just went through, including a new report that's out in Time magazine showing that brains of 76 of the 79 deceased NFL players who donated their brains to science have shown signs of degenerative brain disease. When people talk about CTE, that's what they're talking about. And I'll tell you guys, it's now mandatory for, if your kids play competitive sports, and I'm talking about girls soccer, that you have to go to in effect, a symposium where they go through all the risks, and you walk out of there, and my friend happened to grab the guy who did this, and he said, "Would you let your kid play football?" He goes, "What, are you out of your mind? No way, no chance, no how." They talked about hockey. There's also a high incidence because of the checking in men's hockey, etc. I know, like many of you, I played sports through school here. My children play. They're young. They haven't gotten to this point. But if my son wants to play, I'm going to think really long and hard, and I don't know if I'm going to sign off on the idea of football. I'm curious. How do you guys feel?
I played in high school. I played college ball, and not football. I played lacrosse, which is similarly rough. In the midst of all these horrors, you have to sort of do the unthinkable, which is look to decide what's the worst. The traumatic sudden death stuff, awful as it is statistically small. What really worries me more is the notion that it isn't the sharp blow causing an immediate injury that is at the long-term problem. It's the cumulative banging over time, that there's never a one time you can say that was the shot, and people end up with some sort of degenerative brain injury. This isn't chopped liver. 4 or 5 years ago, an assemblyman from the Bronx named Mike DeBenedetto put a bill in to bar kids at a certain age and also require Pop Warner and other kinds of things to have safety stuff. He got laughed at. No more. People are taking this seriously. I think the science isn't yet clear enough.
I talked to him at the time when he proposed that, and I'll be honest, I said, yeah, that's got a chance here, but you're right. Maybe it was before its time.
Mike was ahead of his time. You should bring him back. He's a good guy.
Dominic, they right now have a baseline test you have to take before you start. I mean, if you go back to when we played football, they never did that. Now they take a baseline test before you go to play, and they measure it. But the problem is, if there's not an incident like we saw at Michigan, where the kid couldn't stand up without being held up, you're not going to know that there's a problem. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I learned is you could get hit right in the chest. If you think about the brain, they explain this as like almost yolk in an egg. If it gets jarred back like whiplash, that has the same impact on the brain here as if there was a head-to-head contact. I just don't know how how the premiums for this are gonna be affordable for high schools, for Pee Wee football, even for colleges that aren't in the Big Tens or the SECs. Beyond the discussions at the dining room table as to whether or not this is good or bad for junior, there's going to be the legitimate question if this is affordable for the schools. I don't know how this ends.
I don't know either. To go to Mr. Brodsky's point, I agree with him that the stats are so much more in favor of the athletes being okay. It's rare when something like that happens. It's very tragic. Back to Mr. Carson, who was a great middle linebacker for the New York Giants. I just don't know as a grandparent how he's going to enforce his grandchild not playing.
My interview
that's
with him,
not his
he
decision
didn't let
to
his
make.
son. His son had a full ride
Okay,
at Clemson,
okay, well, that's
and he said,
fine.
"If you go, we're done." And he wouldn't let his son. His son ended up having an injury that would have made it preventive anyway. But he said to his son, "If you play, we're done." Yeah. And that was a full ride to Clemson and an ACC school. What do you think, Bill?
I mean, I played football in high school also. I had plenty of headaches. I think the bottom line is that people are going to play football. Americans love football, the game. There's a risk to playing
It's
football.
down 6% youth participation right now.
No, there's no question. And among young people, people are going to play football. They love the game. There is a risk to doing it. It is safer not to play football than to play football.
But don't you think,
it's always
Bill,
been that way?
That they're going to start playing lacrosse? They're going to start
Oh,
playing
it's
other
already,
sports
already.
here.
I mean, I
right?
played football in high school, and my younger brother was encouraged to play soccer. I mean, which maybe says something. But yeah, I mean, there is information out there that you can have the freak accident.
When I got to college, there was no football. I played lacrosse and I played basketball, and the only concussion I recall getting, think about that for a second, was in basketball.
Yeah.
If you're playing sports where there's contact, there's going to be a risk factor that probably you can measure over time. Whether this means the end of contact sports is a much tougher question.
But Richard, you got to remember, in the South, football is bigger than ever.
Oh, Texas, it's a religion. You go to certain parts of Florida and other places as well.
I believe part of the problem is that there was a killer mentality being taught by coaches to kids. Hit them as hard as you can. Take them out.
Are you kidding me? They told us lower your head.
Right.
Put your head in his chest.
That wasn't the
I
case.
mean, just think about this.
That wasn't the case when I was playing. We were told, don't put your head in his chest. Put your head alongside.
But unfortunately, even when done the right way, we've seen what happens. I don't know. It's tough, and certainly we're all fans here. I hope the sport doesn't go away, but it's approaching crossroads. When we come back, we will switch gears and take a look at politics on the national stage here. Kentucky Senator Rand Paul, he's blasting the CDC over its response to the Ebola crisis. Why Paul says the CDC, he says, is downplaying the epidemic. We'll talk about if he crossed the line there or not.